In the vast, wind-swept steppes of 12th century Mongolia, a child was born who would one day shake the world. Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan, entered life in 1162, the son of a minor tribal chieftain, but destiny rarely favors the comfortable. When Temujin was just 9, his father was poisoned by rival Tatars, and his family was abandoned by their own clan, left to struggle and starve on the harsh grasslands. Hunger was a daily companion. Every day young Temujin watched his mother desperately scrape together roots and wild berries to keep her children alive. Surrounded by enemies and mistrust, the family was pushed to the very edges of survival. Yet in this crucible of adversity, Temujin's spirit was forged. He learned to hunt, to hide, to fight, and most importantly, to endure. Temujin's early years weren't marked by privilege or security, but by a relentless struggle against both man and nature. But as we'll see, these hardships were not a curse. They were the making of a conqueror. Temujin's early life was a relentless struggle for survival, but adversity only made him stronger. He formed powerful friendships, most notably with Jamuka, a charismatic young Mongol, and Togrul, the Khan of the Great tribe, who would become his mentor. Together, they began to challenge the traditional Mongol order. In a world where betrayal was as common as the wind, Temujin learned the value of loyalty, but alliances could shift in an instant, and every relationship was a delicate dance between trust and ambition. Temujin was no stranger to hardship or violence. At one point, he was even captured and enslaved by a rival clan, forced to wear a wooden collar, but even in chains, his indomitable will could not be broken. He escaped with the help of a sympathetic jailer, one of the first in a long line of unlikely allies who would shape his destiny. The steppes were alive with the thunder of hooves, the clash of swords, and the cries of battle. Temujin began to gather followers, men drawn not by noble blood or birthright, but by his reputation for fairness and strength. For the first time, the Mongol tribes saw a leader who could offer them not just loot, but a future. Temujin's greatest asset was not his skill with the bow or his cunning in battle, but his ability to inspire loyalty and hope in a world defined by fear. Temujin's journey toward greatness was never destined to be easy. Each challenge forged his spirit. After escaping captivity, he began to gather a group of loyal followers, men who recognized his charisma and determination. Together, they learned the art of survival and the subtle game of alliances among the steppe tribes. Word of Temujin's courage and cunning spread far and wide. Soon, powerful leaders began to take notice. He forged alliances with the wise and the ambitious, most notably with Togrul, the Khan of the Great tribe, who once owed Temujin's father a debt of honor. Under Togrul's protection, Temujin's band grew stronger, but the steppe was a place where trust was a dangerous luxury. Betrayals and shifting loyalties became part of his world. Even Jamuka, once his blood brother, turned into a rival, leading his own powerful coalition. Civil war among the Mongol tribes threatened to destroy everything Temujin had built, but he responded with a blend of mercy and ruthlessness that shocked friend and foe alike. Victories on the battlefield earned him both admiration and fear. Finally, at a great Kurultai, the Mongol nobles assembled to decide their future. In a thunderous vote, Temujin was chosen as Genghis Khan, the universal ruler uniting the fractured steppe under a single banner for the first time in history. This was the birth of a new era, the rise of a legend whose ambition would shake the world. After earning the title of Genghis Khan, Temujin understood that his work had only begun. He stood before the Mongol tribes, a land once fractured by endless blood feuds, now looking to him for guidance. Genghis Khan acted swiftly. The days of noble birth, deciding a man's worth, were over. Now it was loyalty and talent that would shape the future. He gathered the tribes and shattered the old hierarchies. The strongest warriors, regardless of origin, rose through the ranks. For the first time, men saw that greatness could be earned, not just inherited. With this new foundation, Genghis Khan built an army unlike any seen before. He structured his forces into units of tens, hundreds, and thousands, each loyal to their leaders, each leader loyal to him. No other steppe nation had achieved such discipline. These soldiers trained relentlessly, learning to ride, shoot, and communicate in silence or storm. The Mongol horde became a living weapon. But to maintain this power, there had to be order. Genghis Khan set down the Yasa, a code of laws both strict and, by the standards of the steppe, remarkably fair. It demanded loyalty, punished betrayal, and offered unexpected protection for the weak. Theft, treason, and even disobedience could mean death. But the law also created a society where even the poorest could appeal for justice. Through a mixture of cunning diplomacy and unyielding force, he drew old enemies into his circle. Feasts, gifts, and marriages sealed new alliances. Genghis Khan's charisma and his ruthless efficiency turned rivals into brothers in arms. For the first time, the Mongols spoke with one voice. Yet uniting the tribes was only the first step. With the steppe finally at peace, Genghis Khan raised his gaze to distant horizons. The world, vast and unprepared, would soon learn to fear the thunder of Mongol hooves. As the dust of endless battles settled, Temujin was no longer just a warrior. He had become Genghis Khan, the Great Khan of all Mongols' tribes that had once spilled each other's blood, now pledged loyalty beneath one banner, united by his vision. The Mongolian steppe, once fractured by old grudges, began to pulse with new life as campfires lit the night in harmony. Word of this new force, fearless, disciplined and bound by iron law, spread like wildfire from the grasslands to distant kingdoms. But for Genghis Khan, uniting the Mongols was only the beginning. He gazed to the distant horizons, the vast kingdoms of the West and the ancient empires of the East. Ambition burned in his heart. The dream was not just survival, but greatness, an empire that would shake the world. Under his rule, the Mongols trained relentlessly, perfecting the art of swift mobile warfare. Every rider became both soldier and scout, every arrow a lesson in discipline. A new age was about to dawn. The world beyond the steppe would soon tremble before the thunder of Mongol hooves. As the Mongol tribes unified under Genghis Khan's vision, their sights turned outward to the vast lands beyond their own. Genghis was not content with simply ruling the steppe. He envisioned an empire that would span continents, one that could not only conquer, but also connect the world. He gathered his most trusted generals and shared his bold plan to strike out beyond the Mongolian plains and challenge the ancient kingdoms of the West and the East. The Mongol armies were organized with precision units of 10, 100 and 1,000 each, fiercely loyal and highly mobile. The first target was the powerful Western Jia dynasty of northern China. The Mongols moved with breathtaking speed, crossing deserts and rivers thought impossible to traverse by such a large force. Their arrows rained down with terrifying accuracy, and their psychological warfare, sometimes sparing those who surrendered, but showing no mercy to those who resisted, became legendary. Despite facing daunting city walls and advanced Chinese fortifications, the Mongols adapted quickly, learning siege warfare from their enemies and even recruiting skilled engineers from captured towns. The Western Xia, overwhelmed by this sudden storm, eventually submitted, marking the Mongols' first major victory outside their homeland. The campaign set a precedent: diplomacy when possible, devastating force when necessary. Genghis Khan's ambitions had only just begun. The Mongol momentum was unstoppable. With their sights set on the wealthy Jin dynasty in northern China, Genghis Khan marshaled his warriors for another bold campaign. The Jin were no ordinary opponents. They possessed powerful armies, heavily fortified cities, and vast resources. Yet the Mongols adapted swiftly, learning to siege massive walled fortresses and harnessing new siege technologies captured from conquered enemies. Genghis Khan's strategies were brilliant and ruthless. He divided his army, sending smaller units to raid supply lines and strike deep into enemy territory, sowing confusion and fear. While the Jin defenders braced themselves behind thick walls, the Mongols were already tearing apart their communications, cutting them off from help. The siege of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, became legendary for its brutality and cunning. The city's defenders held out for months, but hunger and terror took their toll. Finally, the walls fell. The Mongols stormed Zhongdu, leaving a warning to all who might oppose them. Genghis Khan had brought one of the world's richest cities to its knees. By now, his legend was spreading across continents. The Mongol war machine seemed invincible, and kings as far as Europe were starting to fear the thunder of hooves on the steppe. The conquest of the Jin was only the beginning. Genghis Khan, ever restless now, gazed toward the vast steppes and kingdoms beyond. News of his victories swept across Asia like a sandstorm, unpredictable, unstoppable, and terrifying. The Mongols thundered west, targeting the mighty Khwarezmian Empire, a sprawling kingdom renowned for its wealth and scholarship, stretching from the Caspian Sea to the borders of India. But this was no ordinary campaign. The Khwarezmians had insulted Mongol envoys, violating sacred rules of diplomacy. Genghis Khan's fury knew no bounds. He unleashed his armies with a singular message: betrayal would not be tolerated. What followed was a war of annihilation. Mongol tactics feigned retreats, encirclements. Lightning raids devastated city after city. Samarkand and Bukhara, legendary centers of learning, fell to the horsemen. The world had never seen such speed, coordination, and merciless efficiency. Those who resisted faced destruction. Those who surrendered sometimes found mercy. Word of the Mongols' ferocity reached distant lands. Refugees fled in all directions, carrying tales of invincible warriors and entire cities reduced to ashes. Genghis Khan's campaign against the Khwarezmians did more than expand his empire. It shattered old ideas of safety and power, ushering in a new era of fear and uncertainty across the world. But behind the terror, a new reality was taking shape. Trade routes were opened. Ideas traveled farther, and the Silk Road entered a tumultuous, violent, yet dynamic golden age. The Mongol storm was transforming the map, and no one from China to the Mediterranean could afford to look away. The aftermath of the Battle of the Kalka River sent shockwaves through the kingdoms of Eastern Europe. News of the Mongols' devastating victory traveled fast, striking terror into the hearts of princes, kings, and commoners alike. Some doubted the reality of such a swift and total defeat, but survivors, ragged and traumatized, arrived with tales of horror stories of cunning tactics, unstoppable cavalry, and entire armies vanishing as if swallowed by the steppe itself. While the Ruses and their allies struggled to comprehend what had happened, Genghis Khan's generals had no intention of stopping. Their mission had not been conquest, but reconnaissance, a brutal warning shot that revealed the vulnerabilities of their western neighbors. Instead of immediately pressing further into Europe, Subutai and Jebe led their exhausted troops on a long, punishing journey back toward the Mongol heartland. Along the way, they clashed with the Volga Bulgars and other tribes, leaving a trail of fear and legend behind them. The Mongols studied their adversaries, learned local strategies, and collected maps and intelligence that would prove invaluable for the future. Back in Kiev and the other devastated cities, the surviving leaders faced a bitter truth: the Mongols were unlike any foe they had ever known. Panic and distrust spread among the Rus' princes. Some advocated for unity. Others descended into infighting, blaming one another for the catastrophe. Messengers rode in all directions, warning neighboring realms of the threat. But few believed that such a force could return, or that their own armies would fare any better. Meanwhile, word of the Mongols' achievements reached Genghis Khan. He was not only satisfied, but also inspired. The reconnaissance in force had exceeded expectations, proving that the great grasslands of the West were ripe for the taking. He began planning a new wave of campaigns greater in scale, ruthlessness, and ambition. Europe, for the first time, stood on the brink of a new and terrifying era. An unstoppable storm was gathering on the horizon, and only a handful of battered survivors truly understood what was coming next. As the Mongol armies vanished into the vastness of the steppe, their legacy cast a long shadow over Eastern Europe and beyond. The chronicles written in the wake of their campaigns speak not only of violence and destruction, but of the shock that forever altered the psyche of an entire continent. Cities lay in ruins, fields burned, survivors rebuilt among the ashes, forever marked by the trauma of the Mongol tempest. Yet from this devastation, new alliances would form and military tactics would change forever. Kings and princes who once squabbled found themselves driven to build stronger, more unified defenses. The Mongol storm had proven that no fortress was truly impregnable, no kingdom too distant to escape the fury of the horsemen from the east. In their wake, the Mongols forced Europe to adapt, to innovate, to reconsider what it meant to be safe. History would remember the Mongols not only for their terror, but for their impact, accelerating communication, trade, and even the spread of ideas for better or worse. And so the story of Subutai Jebe and their devastating raid remains a lesson for all ages, a warning and a catalyst for change. As we reflect on the Mongol legacy, let us not forget, in the face of chaos and ruin, humanity always finds a way to adapt, to rebuild, and to move forward, scarred but never defeated.